Welcome to Women Who Win, a global media platform to empower women. In this video interview series, we share the stories of women who've made their dreams a reality, overcome challenges, and have never given up. I'm your host today, Roly Lal. I'm a professor of transnational security at the Elliott School of George Washington University. I'm also the co-chair of the Global Affairs and Religion Network, known as Garnet. Garnet investigates topics such as how religious norms affect our legal codes and international affairs. For example, the way that we view women's and children's rights. And I'm particularly excited today to interview our guest because she is passionate about these topics and protecting women and children. So I am so pleased to have with us today, Kay Khan. And let me tell you a little bit more about her because it's superb. State Representative Kay Khan has represented Newton in the Massachusetts House of Representatives since 1995. Since 2009, she has served as the House Chair of the Joint Committee on Children, Families, and Persons with Disabilities. She has led several caucuses in the Massachusetts House, such as the Mental Health Caucus and the Women's Legislators Caucus. And her legislative portfolio celebrates and promotes diversity, which is amazing. She's an unshakable advocate for equal rights for all individuals, both young and old. And her background is very impressive, and we're going to want to hear more about this. Representative Khan earned her bachelor's degree from the Boston University School of Nursing, and her first job as a nurse was at Boston Children's Hospital. Following this, she became an instructor for Boston University School of Nursing, and she went on to earn a master's degree in psychiatric mental health nursing from Boston University. So welcome, Kay, and thank you so much for joining us this morning.
So it's wonderful to be here, and I really first would like to thank my dear friend Manju Sheth, who is the one who wanted to have this happen today, and I also want to thank, and I hope I'm saying the names correctly, Drumel Shah, Raleigh Lal, Deepa Javeri, and really thank you all for organizing the meeting this morning for me to get a chance to say a few words as a member of the House of Representatives for the last 26 years. It's really hard to believe it's been that long. And I think when I first started out, I was thinking, oh, a couple of sessions, but I have found the work so rewarding and have just been so honored that my community has allowed me to come back session after session. So this is actually the 13th session that I've been serving in. So as you have already mentioned, that I am a graduate of Boston University School of Nursing with both a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in psychiatric nurse, and I'm a psychiatric nurse clinical specialist. And I was doing that work before I ran for office. And I was first elected, I was elected actually in 1994, but I began my term in 1995. And as I said, it's really such an honor to serve my community, the city of Newton, as well as to be a member of the legislature and serve all citizens across the across Massachusetts. And we are elected every 2 years. So it's a process that one has to go through if you want to serve in the legislature. So I just wanted to mention a little bit about my background that didn't come up yet. And that is that I met Manju and the Indian community really when my husband, a physician of Indian origin, Nasir Khan, blessed memory, was invited to become and became involved in the Indian Medical Association of New England, and he became president of the organization shortly after he became a member of the organization. Though he was born and raised in London and is a graduate of King's College and Westminster Medical School, he was always very proud of his Indian roots and his family, originally from Rampur, UP. In fact, my daughter Tira is a photographer, quite a significant photographer now, and she is actually having a solo presentation in Winchester, Massachusetts this coming week, talking about her visit to Rampur in late 2019 and the research she did about her background and the Muslim community in Rampur, and her photographs and research she now calls A Place I Never Knew. So she, knew only about this through her her father and family members, but she did travel to India, and he took her to India in 2013. And then again, she was there in 2019. So if anybody's interested in seeing her presentation, you can contact me afterward, and I'd be happy to give you that information.
Okay, could you tell us a little bit more about your journey in politics? For example, how you went from being a psychiatric nurse to a politician. I mean, this is really inspiring for a lot of women who are watching us today.
So how and why did I become a state representative, you have asked. And I think about that a lot. And I suspect that my father, who was a German Jew, who grew up under the Nazi regime in Germany, arrived in the United States in 1937 to complete his medical training. He was lucky to get his parents and grandparents to the United States in 1941, and very, very proud to become an American citizen. And he considers himself a citizen of the world. So that's kind of how I was brought up, to be a citizen of the world. And I suspect that that's what really influenced my interest in finding a way to give back, because I heard so much about what was happening in Germany and the Holocaust and all of that. And so I think that really influenced my interest to find a way of giving back, to care deeply about human rights and social justice. So I think of that as the beginning of my journey.
So the ban on child marriage is basically the bill, an act to end child marriage in Massachusetts. And what we know is that child marriage undermines a girl's health, education, and economic opportunities, and increases the risk of domestic violence and divorce. Because they're minors, married children face many obstacles when they try to leave or resist such a marriage, including obtaining services from the Department of Children and Families, bringing legal actions, including filing for divorce, renting, and opening even a checking account. So this bill would ban marriage under the age of 18 with no exceptions. It's wonderful to see your support of human rights, particularly through the proposed ban on child marriage. Can you tell us a bit more of why you proposed this bill and why it's important for the state of Massachusetts today?
And so, we're here to talk this morning about my 52 pieces of legislation that I have filed for this session on many, many different issues. And this bill that we're going to be talking about a little bit this morning has been filed by me for the third time. And so that's, I've been working at this for about 5 years. I also have a Senate sponsor of the bill. Her name is Senator Harriet Chandler. She's from Worcester. So if anybody listening is from Worcester, certainly feel free to contact her and show your support. And there's another legislator from Medford and Melrose, Paul Donato, who also has been very, very supportive. And he has been educated about this through an organization called Zonta International. And they've been extremely supportive of this legislation going forward. So I'm really hoping that this is the year that we're going to get it done, or this session, and hopefully before July 31st, 2021, when this current session that we're in now comes to a close with regard to any kind of controversial pieces of legislation. This bill actually was luckily and interestingly passed the Senate, the Massachusetts Senate in 2019, and it was passed unanimously by the Senate, but it kind of got stuck in the House, so it didn't make it through. But again, I'm really hopeful that we have a tremendous amount of support from a whole coalition of folks, and many people are really interested, including many legislators would like to see this happen. So it's complicated in terms of pushing legislation through, as we see in Washington, the similar kinds of activities happen in Massachusetts and all states. But luckily, so far, 6 states have actually passed this legislation. And so we're hoping to be the 7th. The states that have passed the legislation are New York, New Jersey, Rhode Island, Delaware, Minnesota, and Pennsylvania. And Connecticut? Did I say Connecticut? So New York, New Jersey, Rhode Island, not Connecticut, and Delaware, Minnesota, and Pennsylvania. So that's a good sign. And again, we have a huge coalition. Legislators are really eager to see it pass. The Massachusetts Women's Caucus of Women Legislators are on board, and we are moving toward perhaps having a letter from all of the women in the Massachusetts legislature to get to the leadership and say, we really need to have this happen.
Why do you think child marriage is still supported by so many citizens today? For example, do you think that religious norms support child marriage in the cases that you've seen?
So I would just say that that the banning of child marriage is definitely supported by so many, and I don't think there's really any opposition. I think mostly it's about education and educating folks that there's a need to do this, because although it is considered a human rights abuse by the United States State Department, as I said, 6 states have banned child marriage. And we know that, for example, all through the research that we've done, there are between 2000 and 2016, 1,231 children as young as 14 were married in Massachusetts. And 84% were girls wed to adult men. And children are powerless in the legal process. And they're entered into marriage and sent home to really essentially be raped by their parents in a way. And the judges they just don't have the ability to put a stop to this. And so we are hoping that this will really help put them in a position where they can really just make sure it doesn't happen. So there's really no way to tell if a child who is being entered into a marriage is being forced to do so. The issue is that child marriage can easily be forced because judges have wide discretion to approve child marriage. So when parents are interested in having their child married early, all they need to do is go before a judge, and the judge just they see the parents, they see the child, they just give the permission, and they're not required to do an interview or conduct an interview, and there's no investigation. So we need a more robust judicial review process, and that's really the only way we can prevent this from happening. And the onus is really still being placed on a child who's forced to marry, and they have to choose between, just the idea of not being supportive of their own parents. Children really are loyal to their parents. So if the parents want them to do this, they think that must be okay. And they don't want to lie to the court. So because if they lie to the court, if they don't lie to the court, then, the parents are upset that the child is standing up for herself, or it's mostly women. And also the fact that children have very limited legal capacity until they reach the age of majority, which is 18. And because children have limited legal rights, if they don't want to marry, there's almost nothing they can do. If they go to the police will take them home. If they don't have the right to, hire a lawyer to, go before a judge and say, I don't want to do this. And there's also that fear that if they do that, again, it's going to be disloyal to the parents. So they're in a very tough situation. And so this is something that we really want to try to protect, how we really want to protect them. They're not allowed to file for divorce on their own. And even with the Department of Children and Families, they can't do much either once they're married. And it's a contract. When you get married, it's a contract, and it's very, very difficult to get out of a contract. And so this is why we think it's something that we definitely need to be doing. So I think that in terms of your question around religious norms, I think a lot of it has to do with education. I think that, there are parents that probably think they're doing the right thing, to marry their child off early. If they see a man that they think is going to be respectful and take care of their child, maybe they can't afford to continue to take care of the child. There's just many different reasons. We don't know all the answers. And in terms of the young people that we are aware of that have come forward, we can't say it's because of a religious reasons necessarily. I think there are just so many reasons. And in fact, we have had some women come forward and testify at the previous hearings. And the one that came forward in the last session was just so interesting. She was forced into a marriage. She was 15 at the time, and her mother was just, I think, not so adequate to take care of her. So she was in the custody of foster care, and her father was in prison. And she there was somebody sort of circulating around where she was living. And so he approached the family about marriage. And she did get married. There was a contract, and she proceeded to have 9 children. 9. And so, it's really, and again, that's, one could consider that that's also forced, once you get into that situation. She was able to escape finally after her 9th child, and she left the state and went to Pennsylvania, and she started searching. She was a very smart woman, lost all of her education. And that's the other thing. There's just so much that you lose by not being able to continue with your education. And so she lost all of her education, and she started searching online to see if there was anything out there that could really help her. And she came across 2 names that popped up as being interested in ending child marriage. And one was Hillary Clinton, and the other was Harriet Chandler in Worcester. And so she did contact Harriet, I should say Senator Chandler, and Senator Chandler put her in touch with this organization called Unchained at Last, who have been doing a lot of the work and really trying to move this forward. And she was willing to come to Massachusetts to testify, to tell her story and her journey. And it was just really remarkable. And I think it gave us all a good sense of what happens to a young woman if they are in this particular kind of situation. So I think that, I don't know if that answers all of your questions, but I'm certainly happy to step back and let you ask more.
Well, I just wanted you to go in a little bit more detail. And why do you think, given how horrific this is for the development of these children who are getting married so early, to have all these children and not be able to continue their education, why do you think that child marriage is still so supported by so many citizens today? Where is that support being driven from?
Well, I quite honestly, excuse me, I don't think it is supported. I think it's about education. It's helping people understand that a young woman, child loses so much if they end up in this situation. Many of these instances are, they end up in violence, domestic violence kinds of situations, and there's more likely to be violence in the relationship if they're under 18. Most of the women who are getting married are being married to older men, at least 4+ years older. Just here in Massachusetts, this year alone, there were 14 applicants for parents coming forward to the court asking to have a child of theirs married. So I think so much, I think families don't understand necessarily what they lose if a child is married at a young age, under the age of 18, that it's a contract they can't get out of, that it's likely that it's not going to be a good situation. Obviously there's some cases, some people have said, oh, I got married at 16 and I'm fine. But those are rare. And most of them are situations where the young woman is going to experience sexual abuse and violence. So I really think of it as education. And, there might be families that are coming from maybe other countries where this has happened. And I would just like to mention, by the way, that India did pass, I think it's legislation, I don't know how it works over there, but they made a law that says you can't get married under the 18. Now, when I talk to other Indians, they say, oh yeah, well, they can figure it out, a way to kind of do it, but then not sign the papers until they're 18 or something like that. But I think what needs to be pointed out in this day and age in particular, what you lose by getting married at a very early age. And it's being up against violence, being up against forced, pregnancies, being up against the loss of your education and economic security. I mean, if you don't have an education, you really miss out on economic security for the future.
Great. Thank you so much. And so I think that we've taken up a lot
Let me
of.
that answer, because I
Yes.
don't, I hope that answered the question.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And you can't really pinpoint any particular cultural group either. I think it's just that's what we've found anyway. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's a particular culture, it's a particular religion. It can be anywhere, anytime, and I think what this will do is to educate people more about the importance of letting a child, if they're 17 and they're in love, they can wait till they're 18. It's just much better for a young person to be 18 so they can really protect themselves.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I just want to thank you so much for taking your time today on a beautiful day to explain to us more about, the ban on child marriage and why it's so critical, and the work that you're doing as a state legislator. And so hopefully we will hear more from you on this in the future. Is there any last thoughts you have that you want to share with us on your role?
I actually, there is, and that is that if people from Massachusetts are listening, I would like them to find out who represents them and contact their legislator and let the legislator know that they really are interested in this particular piece of legislation. I'll give you the bill number. It's House 1709. So that's the House number, and there's a Senate number as well, which is Senate 937. So again, I always urge people certainly in Massachusetts, if they're from Massachusetts, to find out who represents you. A lot of people don't know who represents them. And so find out who represents you, send them an email or give them a phone call and say, please support House 1709 and Senate 937. And they will tell you whether they support, whether they are supporting the legislation or not. Ask them to co-sponsor. They can become co-sponsors of the legislation, so they can, the legislator can then co-sponsor the legislation if they have not already. We have about 90 representatives that have already co-sponsored the legislation. So that's good, but there are 160 in the House, so there are more. It's also bipartisan. I want people to know that it's supported by the Republican members of the House of Representatives, as well as the Democratic members. So it's bipartisan and supported, very much so. If people have questions, if you call your state representative and the representative has questions and you feel you can't answer, you can certainly contact me. I'm happy and available anytime to answer any questions related to this. Great. Or anything. So.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. And I'd just like to mention to all of the viewers today that we would request that you like and subscribe to our YouTube channel by hitting the like icon. And also do check our website, womenwhowin100.com, and join us, Women Who Win #Dreamcatchers on our Facebook group, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And we look forward to seeing you again soon, seeing all of you again soon. Thank you so much for being with us today.
And thank all of you.